Before I begin exposing some demonic lies that many modern people say today revolving around early America, I want everyone to understand that I think those so-called ancient natives in eastern Northern America crafted the best ancient civilization known to man in all of history, in my personal opinion. If given a choice of which time and place that I can exist on this earth, it would be in the Appalachian Mountains of North Carolina and Tennessee, about 5,000 years ago, living as a Cherokee. I have a deep respect for the culture and beliefs of those ancient people. Some lies we tell are relatively harmless. When your friend asks if their clothes make them look fat and you say no, when in reality they shouldn't dress in such tight clothes, so you lie to avoid hurting your friend's delicate feelings. That's a relatively harmless lie. The set of lies I will address in this video are of the dangerous and provably harmful type that have already adversely affected millions of people around the entire world. Many people in other countries, not just in America, also believe these hurtful demonic lies, so they join in the hate of just one people, when in reality everyone involved was at fault for what occurred. And these lies have been crafted and spread to people all over the world for many decades, mainly by leftists in academia and educational systems. Most people don't research much. They just blindly believe the narratives that academics want to weave. The academics omit the full truth and mainly present details that only criticize Europeans because that suits their agenda for using the remaining so-called natives as pawns in their socio-political chess game. They need to fabricate as many victim cards as possible to dissolve current-day America and reshape it. If you don't believe me that the left versus right dichotomy is an eternal battle between deceivers and truth seekers, let me show you something from antiquity before we proceed in fixing these harmful lies. First, I want you to take a look at this entity, which is a leftist organization or society that's been operating since before 1884, but they really became official in 1884. So check out the name of it, the date it was established, and you can see the URL so that you can go and check it out yourself. Okay, so I put together a little collage to help you see what this entity is all about. That's their current logo. This is their original logo, right here. And this is their logo that they came out with after this one got a little bit of pushback because it's so evil looking. This one's not much better, but it's a lot better than that. And I'll explain to you what's going on in these images in just a second. And here's an old pressed metal disc representing the society. Now what we have here in their original logo, if you can tell what's going on here, it's a wolf in sheep's clothing. So there's the dead sheep's skin covering the wolf. So it's a wolf in sheep's clothing. Now, all of us know what that represents and what that means. It represents deception and evil. A wolf in sheep's clothing is not something nice. And that's the logo they chose to go with for their original logo. Then when that got a lot of pushback, people were like, hey, that is pretty evil looking there, what you got going on. Then they settled on this one, which is the turtle. And there was a banner under the turtle that read, when I strike hard. What this turtle represents is also the deception, but it is a slow, it reveals another aspect of the society. It reveals a slow, deceptive movement into a culture. And then once the iron is hot, once they can manipulate things enough to get the irons hot, that's when they strike the hammer down upon the culture or upon the people. So this one also got some pushback. So then they, I guess, decided it's best to just write the name and not make any images anymore because they kept revealing what they're all about in their imagery and logos. Now down here, we scroll down some more. I went and got the actual stained glass window where all of this is in the where all of this is shown in the London School of Economics, LSE. So take a good look at what's going on there. There is the iron It's basically the world where they have heated it up to make the iron hot. And here's the guy with the hammer that's going to strike it once the iron is hot enough. And we have a little badge over here that says, or shield that says, pray devoutly, hammer stoutly. And then we have a bunch of people praying down here. And then it says, it was commissioned in 1910 by the archetypal Fabian, George Bernard Shaw, who features in it, top right, dressed in green. The man in red helping GBS hammer the world into shape is Sidney Webb, perhaps the most influential of the Fabians and, alongside his wife Beatrice Webb, a founder of the London School of Economics. On the left, working the bellows, is Edward Pease, the secretary of the Fabian Society. All right. Reshaping the world in the way that they see fit. And I believe this organization or society had ties to Marxism and other leftist ideologies. Now, my point in showing you this is not to try to make you believe in some stupid conspiracy or anything. I'm just showing you that the left versus right dichotomy, the eternal battle between deceivers and truth seekers, has been going on since the beginning of time. Okay, let's tackle the first lie. They were indigenous to the Americas. An obvious and objective truth is that humans do not sprout from the ground. We observe that new humans come from vaginas, not sprouting from the ground. No group of humans at any point in history can rationally lay ancestral claim to any areas of the land or waterways on the earth. To lay eternal claim to any areas of the earth because one of your ancient ancestors walked upon it is childish and foolish. It is very low IQ reasoning. There's no common sense involved. We all stem from either one pair of original ancestral parents, such as the story of Adam and Eve, then diversified in appearance according to region, or evolution created all of the different races of humans we see today from different hominids that modern humans like us displaced. Or there was one ancestral set of parents that was made through evolution that we then diversified from. Or God crafted the first man and woman, the first set of parents to all of us. In my opinion, it's highly probable that humans or humanoids of some type were already here and had to be displaced by the Teepee people migration coming in waves. The Teepee people did not keep written records, only oral tales passed down over many generations. Many times an elder giving the oral history lesson to everyone was a shaman that was skewed by ritualistic hallucinogens. It's Chinese whispers on drugs. You ever heard of Chinese whispers? If not, I'll show you real quick.
Chinese whispers, some Commonwealth English, or telephone, American English and Canadian English. 1. Is an internationally popular children's game. 2. It is also called transmission chain experiments in the context of cultural evolution research, and is primarily used to identify the type of information that is more easily passed on from one person to another. 3. Players form a line or circle, and the first player comes up with a message and whispers it to the ear of the second person in the line. The second player repeats the message to the third player, and so on. When the last player is reached, they announce the message they heard to the entire group. The first person then compares the original message with the final version. Although the objective is to pass around the message without it becoming garbled along the way, part of the enjoyment is that, regardless, this usually ends up happening. Errors typically accumulate in the retellings, so the statement announced by the last player differs significantly from that of the first player, usually with amusing or humorous effect.
Okay, so now we've established that we all understand that humans come from vaginas and they don't sprout from the ground or the earth. In reality, there are no naturally occurring humans in any land area on earth that we can prove where they came from and when. It's impossible to prove that. So what I did was I went and researched the ancient Siberians, because there's this hypothesis in the scientific community that there's a land bridge that formed when the sea levels were much lower than they are now, and the ancient Siberians some 20 to 10,000 years ago were able to cross that land bridge in a few waves of migrations into Alaska and North America. And the people that I came upon were the Ket people or the Yeniseian people. And these are Siberians that still exist today, that also existed back then. They have a very ancient oral tradition, and on the scientific side of things, they are said to originate from basically just a conglomeration of East Asians. Some dark skin, some lighter skin, then them blending together in the ancient world. And then finally, science claims that they came across the land bridge. Even if there was no land bridge, I believe that humans were traveling around in seaworthy boats for a lot longer than we know. So there didn't even really need to be a land bridge for people to cross that piece of ocean. It could be that the land bridge theory is correct. It could be that the land bridge theory is false. We can't prove it. So as I was studying these Ket and Yeniseian people, which Ket is a part of the Yeniseian people, but I thought the Kets looked most like the people of South America and also the North American so-called Native American Indians. And even these people, they didn't just sprout in Asia. It's just where they happen to come from. Did an image search for a Native American chief, and I just wanted to show you how closely the bone structure and the appearance of these people are. And you can see the Ket people have teepees, and they look just like the Native American teepees that many tribes used. Alright, so let's take this guy right here and bring him up. It looks to me, now I want you to especially look at the cheekbones. Look at the high pronounced cheekbones of all of these people. This man could easily be in any of these families, I think. And nobody would question anything. He would look like part of the tribe. Now look at the appearance and cheekbones of this man. See, this man here, this Ket, he has a more oriental eye. But even the Native Americans have oriental type slant to their eye shape. Now this woman here especially, she looks so much like a Native American Indian, and her child looks so much like a Native American Indian. This man, this Ket man, looks more like an old South American outlaw type. I could see him wearing a cowboy hat and a big buckle and some guns. He looks very South American to me, almost Mexican. But this Ket really looks Native American Indian. That is a Native American Indian face. And look at this boy. Most people would just assume that's a Native American boy, but he's Russian. So I just wanted to show you, you can go online and do your own research into these images and see how much alike these people look, and especially the high cheekbones that all of the Native Americans seem to have. Very high pronounced cheekbones, and it's the same with the Yeniseian people. They look like they're the same. So I think that's pretty compelling evidence that the land bridge theory holds a little bit of water, or at least the theory that so-called native indigenous Americans actually came from Asia in a wave of migrations. And I showed the Chinese whispers concept to show that it's virtually impossible with humans that oral tellings of history over thousands of years with no written records would be even remotely accurate to the original story, if there even was an original story. Hindus also have a deep history of oral-only tales with no written records in their deepest antiquity. Their written records began after that of the Abrahamic Arabs. So that being said, Jews, Christians, or Muslims should not feel superior to Hindus or anybody else, or Native Americans, about their written record. They shouldn't feel superior about their written record keeping over thousands of years, because historical evidence shows that all holy scriptures get altered all throughout history, even the Quran. There are no complete first original scriptures in existence to compare later or modern copies to for any religion. They're all lost in time. We cannot study them in their original form thanks to thousands of years of people burning, altering, and editing. So my point in saying all of that is that there's no way on the Great Spirit's beautiful green earth that those people know their true origins or timetables. Even atheist scientists in academia should also be taken as falsehoods initially, unless what they claim is objectively proven and repeatable. Science has been caught lying more times than humans can keep track of. Science lies when a government or authority wants to manipulate, convince, or trick the people, and that happens a lot, all throughout history. And the radiocarbon dating aspect of science has some reliability issues that are well documented in the scientific community. Science could very well have the ages and dates for these things wrong by large margins. I believe that in many years, people of our time will be seen as idiots by people of the future for believing most of the things our science is telling us today. So none of us, have any ground to stand on to claim historical record-keeping accuracy or superiority to others that only have oral tales that they passed down through thousands of years of generations. So I believe that's enough to dismantle the lie that they were indigenous to the Americas. Even without all of showing you the Ket people and all that, we all know intrinsically that humans don't sprout from the earth. And nobody knows where anybody started or when or who the first were. Okay, the second lie or spin of the truth that I hear a lot of people on the left saying is that they were relatively peaceful and decent people. Now, it's got to be said from the onset here that all of the different tribes, for instance, the Cherokees and Choctaws, the people of the Five Nations tribes, they were a lot different than the tribes that were on the West Coast, like the Comanches or Apaches or some of the tribes that were more in the central region of America. So among the different tribes that were here, there was a wide spectrum of good and evil among them. So it must be noted that the things I'm about to show you should not be applied to all Native American tribes. I'm going to be showing you various different web searches that I've done that reveal certain things that not a lot of people research on their own. They just believe what academia provides them, and a lot of times academia omits the truth if they happen to be leftists especially that have a hate for European colonialism. People that have a hate for Europeans and the migrations that the Europeans did, like everybody else is allowed to do, they will omit the truth and spin the truth a little bit to create a victimhood class out of those people so they can use them as pawns in their socio-political chess game. Okay, the first search term that I have for you is Native American Tribes Human Sacrifice. You can put that into a search engine and you will get tons of results that prove from different educational institutions, books, and just random articles that have no sources attached to them. But what I would do if I were you is only read the reputable sources, like an EDU or like Cambridge.org. That's probably the Cambridge Educational Institute. Or if you scroll down, you have Wikipedia, which Wikipedia is one of the few sources where they will reference on the bottom of the pages all of the sources they got that information from, whether it be books in libraries or scientific research studies or articles that come from educational institutions. That's why I reference Wikipedia a lot, because a lot of these articles that you'll get online, there's no sources cited at the bottom. So who knows if that person's making it up or not? At least with Wikipedia, you know they're getting it from reputable sources, at least. So in this search term, Native American tribes human sacrifice, you can prove to yourself that a lot of the tribes had, not all of them, dabbled in human sacrifice, even sacrificing newborn babies for ritualistic purposes. But I'm not going to judge them for that. I'm just saying this is what they did. Now, the second search term that we'll put in is Native American tribes at war with each other before meeting Europeans. So here's one from blogs.Scientific American. See, that's not a good reputable source. But let's see what he says anyway. I wouldn't believe this though, but if you go down through the reputable sources, you'll find some very reputable sources in this list. And there's many, many different pages, and you got to find the reputable sources, and you can learn that Native Americans had a lot of tribal warfare amongst themselves way before the Europeans ever showed up or they ever even met them. Now, the next search term is Native American cannibals. In this search term, you can learn that Native Americans dabbled in cannibalism, which I'm not going to judge that either. People get hungry, maybe it's tasty, I don't know. And the last one we'll check out in the subject of Native Americans being relatively peaceful and decent people is Native American raids on pilgrims. So in this search term, you can research and find out whether or not natives attacked the pilgrims. So basically, in my research, what I found out, and you want to research for yourself, don't just believe what I'm saying. I found out that the reason why the English, the British, came to the New World as pilgrims, the pilgrim types that landed on the east coast of North America, they were religious refugees. So they were Christian refugees fleeing Europe because they were being persecuted and attacked. They couldn't live peaceful lives there once they converted to Christianity. And when these people landed, they were sick, tired. They were on death's doorstep almost. And so it wasn't like a huge wave of British ships came in with able-bodied men to take over this continent. That's kind of like what leftists have in their head, is that a bunch of able-bodied people arrived, whether they be families or not, and there was a lot of them, enough of them to implant themselves and start warring with the tribal people there. But in actuality, they landed and they had a relative long time of peace and working together with the natives on the East Coast. But then something along the way created a rift in the two cultures where there was disparities between the two cultures, making it to where they weren't going to be able to go forward united and together. A lot of the natives worked for and with the pilgrim settlers, and a lot of them were against the pilgrim settlers gaining a foothold there. But they allowed them to gain a little foothold there. And let me just state that how come it's fine for every other type of people besides white to have to leave their homelands because they're being either religiously persecuted or they're being hunted in some way, or there's just not enough opportunity? It seems like we allow all people all over the world, when they're downtrodden and in need of help, we allow them to move in waves of refugees into better places to find a better way of life. When how come we don't afford that same thing to these poor Christian refugees fleeing from Europe? Just think about that for a minute. And if you're going to call them evil for fleeing Europe as refugees, religious refugees, then you're going to have to condemn everybody that does that today. All these waves of migration, of people running, screaming from their countries into the open arms of a more stable place, you're going to have to demonize all of them as well if you're going to demonize the Europeans for doing that initially when they came here. So in this search term, you can see how it wasn't exactly the settlers just attacking and killing Indians. It was a little bit of back and forth. And who knows who initiated things. We can't go back, and we can't really believe everything in history, and we definitely can't go back and see for ourselves. That's why I say, put history on the back burner. Instead, look at, and the reason why I'm going back in history and looking at these things, because the leftists use these portions of history, and they twist them and spin them and make lies out of it, and they use that to hurt people of today. So that's why you might think, hey, why is Adam dwelling in the past? I'm not dwelling in the past. The leftists are. And they're making victimhood classes out of all these people to use as political footballs in their socio-political agendas. So I'm just going to clear up the misconceptions that the leftists spread around. Okay, so the third lie that the leftists use is British or Dutch settlers stole their land. Now I want you to put in this research term. Why did Native Americans sell land to the Europeans? And I'm writing it that way to prove to you that much of the land was sold. Now, let me see if I can find a good reference for what I'm talking about. Here we go. Native Americans did not, and this is an EDU link. That means it's some kind of educational entity. So it says Native Americans did not appreciate the notion of land as a commodity, especially not in terms of individual ownership. As a result, Indian groups would sell land, but in their minds had only sold the rights to use the lands. Like in their minds, they only thought they were renting it out short term. So it was and like I was telling you before, I've read a lot about what some of these chiefs believed, and they didn't understand how a human can be so arrogant that he thinks he could buy a piece of God's creation, a piece of the Great Spirit's creation. Just as you cannot own the Great Spirit itself, how could you own the Great Spirit's creation? So I think that was the main thing in their minds, that I think they thought to themselves, hey, these silly Europeans think they can actually buy and sell the earth? Sure. Give us all kind of money and trinkets or whatnot and gadgets and technologies that you guys are working on that we don't have. Give it all to us. Sure, you use the land for whatever you want. But they didn't understand that the Europeans were buying it. Now, what I want to say is that Chinese are going around buying up large parts of other countries. And if they get enough, they'll start moving in to occupy those places when they get overcrowded where they are. They'll say there's a lot of Chinese people over there in China. So they could start moving and occupying, populating these places that they're buying up. And once enough of them get in place, your country's gone. If you're not organized enough to absorb them in and make them assimilate, they probably won't assimilate. They'll probably just slowly take it over. And there'll be a divide in your two cultures. For instance, Africans in Africa and Chinese buying up a lot of stuff. If Chinese come over there and start occupying it, there's going to be a divide in your cultures where eventually there's going to become a rift where the two just can't get along, and there's going to be a lot of wars. And if you're not ready for it, they're going to take over that whole continent. And you can't call them evil for that. You can't call them the new boogeyman for that. But I guarantee you they're going to become the new European colonist types. In everybody's eyes, in the future, they're going to be like, oh, these evil Chinese. No, not evil Chinese. They're buying it fair and square. And you're selling your countries out. Even in America, we're doing it with the Chinese and other countries. We're selling our country out to foreign interests. And this nation will change its face once again because of that. Now, I say that because enough of the land was sold in early America by the Indians voluntarily without being forced to where the Europeans were able to get enough of a population here and enough of a foothold to where when the differences of opinions and the cultural divides came into play, they weren't going anywhere. They already had established townships and it was on at that point. And one or the other had to go. And I'm not going to say who was evil more and who was taken advantage of or whatnot, but This is just human nature. This is the human condition. You can't get mad at it because every people are the same. And every group of people have good and evil intermingled within them. Even the Cherokees that I'm so fond of. I'm really fond of the Cherokees, but I'm sure they had a large population of evil within their ranks and a large population of good. And they had to do internal cleansing to root out the evil. Okay, we're on to lie number 4 that the leftists use. And that is, they adopted and learned slavery only after meeting Europeans. And this is very easy to debunk. You can just write into any search engine, Native Americans enslaved other tribes. So it says here from wikipedia.org, and like I said, Wikipedia reveals their sources at the bottom. So it's not just people writing at random out of their head. Sometimes Wikipedia gets it wrong, but there's no other source we have on the internet that is more ready to show their sources where they got the information from. So I think it's more trustworthy than a blog or even an EDU link, because in educational institutes, a lot of times they'll just write stuff in their pages and won't cite where they got the information from. So it says some Native American tribes held war captives as slaves prior to and during European colonization. And then you can go on and on down through all this information, and you'll find out that the consensus is, once you go digging and looking for it, and you don't listen to leftist professors or leftist grade school teachers, you'll find out the truth, that they did enslave each other for thousands and thousands and thousands of years before they ever met the Europeans. And when you look into it, you'll see that it was very torturous. They didn't just enslave you. And when they killed people, when they killed captives or people that were their enemies, it was torturous. Sometimes for days. They would take days to kill you. And there's really no reason to torture a captive if the ultimate goal is to kill them. You could just end them right then. That would be the humane thing to do. The torture comes in is when you want to make them pay as a form of revenge that is wildly brutal, which I'm not going to judge them for that either. I might do the same thing for somebody that wronged me. For a neighboring tribe that wronged my tribe, I don't know what I would do. Okay, we've made our way to number 5, which is the last lie that leftists in the Americas and abroad like to use, is America still won't stop oppressing and destroying the natives. All right, so there's a population of the native tribes still left in the United States. And they're a special protected class of people who get special privileges from the government that normal citizens don't get. Some form of way to say, I'm sorry, which I don't think America should be doing at all. They are a people who, there was a cultural divide that happened when refugees came here and started populating it. There was a cultural divide that happened, then there was wars and a long time of conflict, and the natives lost. They couldn't work together with the newcomers. There was too many newcomers already here to just run out easily, so they lost. Now, who in history do Africans, when they go to war, do they put up the people that they defeated? Do they give them money? Do they put them up on land and help them out all the time? I don't see a lot of that happening in Africa. I don't see a lot of that happening in the Middle East. I don't see a lot of that happening in Asia at all. I don't see... It could be happening at small levels, but not something like what the United States is doing to the entity that had to be defeated here in order to unify the whole continent and in order to stop the conflicts. So it's silly to say that America still won't stop oppressing and destroying the natives. As far as the human condition goes, in the way that every other race of people besides Europeans behaves, nobody is worrying about the people they defeated in the past. Nobody's helping them out. Nobody's giving them money and things like that. So I think America's treating them pretty good relative to the rest of the human condition globally. I think America's treating these people very, very well. And it's my opinion that these people should assimilate into America and stop trying to remain a tribal culture that lost a long, long, long time ago. Maybe they think that they can make a resurgence and bring a large portion of the Americas back into their governance. But I really don't think it's going to happen. And even if we do just give it back to them and we all become tribal peoples here, which I would love actually, but I think we would be open for being taken over by rising India or rising China, the rising Russia. All of these entities are getting more and more powerful militarily. And if we go back to a tribal lifestyle, which was, I think, a better way to live in union with the earth, even though I think it's a better way to live, we would be sitting ducks. So that's why I think the Native Americans that are here still, that are getting privileges from the government, I think they should drop all that and just assimilate. But that's something that can be debated, I'm sure. That's something they wouldn't like to hear, I'm sure. But ultimately, it would be their best move, because I don't think we can go back in time as much as I would want to.